listening on the SHR Media Network. Caution, there will be mature themes explored and potentially adult language used. If conservatarian words, phrases, certain concepts, or rhetoric offends you, tune out now.
Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike?
Tomo, you magnificent bastard, I read your book. I drink your milkshake.
How dare you?
I call that bold talk for a one-eyed fat man.
Fill your hand, you son of a bitch!
Captain.
Captain. Captain. Captain. Captain. Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain. Captain. Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain.
Captain. Captain.
No, not yet. Not yet. Don't pass out on me yet. Of course you realize this means war.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
What a great show we got tonight for you, me, he, she, it, and everyone here. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to BZ's Berserk, Bobcat, Saloon radio show, where I'm broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, always spelled with a K, a mere 2 miles east of the locus of evil on the entire left coast, the Bill Mill, the belly of the beast, the Capitol building in downtown Sacramento at 10th and L Streets, where at night you can hear the death of common sense and its concomitant wail as it wafts from that putrefying edifice. Be forewarned, what you're about to hear for the next 2 hours consists of my opinion and no one else's. And of course, because of fear porn that has gripped this nation and certainly the city of Sacramento, the Saloon isn't open, but I am still serving, I should care to point out. Stiff drinks, facts, history, logic, rationality, proportion, context, tradition, intent, and common sense out the back door. A reminder, we don't water our drinks just like we don't water our conversation. Politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law, we talk about it all right here at the Saloon, where the speech is free, but the booze is not. It's September 10th. The year of our Lord, 2020. In the first hour, we have Dan Butcher. In the second hour, joining in will be Sack Heads SHAUN. And if anybody else wants to telephone, that's up to you, too. 575-208-4481, 575-208-4481. It's a late-night show. It's 8:05 on the left coast. It's 10:05 Central. It's 11:05 on the East Coast and in Bolivia. It's 1749 and 223.7. Paragraph 4, drawer 7, look under file C, and please see page 60. And I never did quite understand Bolivian time. I never got that. Tonight it is Butcher.
Send your message. Press 1 at any time.
Wait a minute.
To listen to your message, press 2. To re-record, press 3.
Okay. Let's try this again. Because I see Dan is in chat. So apparently I got Dan's voicemail. I see the Alaskan. I see Sergeant Booker. I see Sarah is in chat. I see Texas Dan. I hear the phone ringing. Because we agreed. Okay, call. Wait a minute. Call ended. I didn't end the call. Okay, I know what's happening. All right, let's do this. Una más, shall we? Here we go. See, the deal is...
You have reached the voicemail box of 806...
Nope. Not going to reveal his phone number on the air. Okay. That's all right. We'll try it once more because I am BZ and this is my life. Fuck my life. It's 2020. Both Sack Heads SHAUN and I have said that any number of times. Sarah Nichols says, remember Benghazi. Yes. And I have, you know what? I'm going to try this one more time, and then I'm off to the races because I have a lot of stuff to do tonight. And Dan and I were both wondering, what would this be like if...
You have reached the voicemail box of...
All righty then. We're not talking to Dan Butcher tonight. I'll save this phone for incoming calls. Okay, because I'll only try X number of times. Because trying to get somebody on the telephone and not getting them is called a show killer. But I do have things for you tonight. One of them, you know what? Let's start in this direction. There is breaking news tonight. And there is also a tribute. This is the closest that I'm going to be getting to 9/11. So I think it's fitting that we do this tonight.
The cockpit is not answering their phone. Our number 1 has been staffed, and our 5 has been staffed.
I'm going to call from Washington. I am in a situation where Americans learned a possible hijack.
What's going on, Betty? The crap is erratic again. Problem, very erratic. Betty, talk to me. Betty, are you there? Betty? Betty?
A plane just
What?
737.
What?
The World Trade
Who are you talking to?
Oh, God. Oh, my God.
United 175, New York. We have some problems over here right now. We might have a hijack over here, 2 of them.
Jules, this is Ryan. Lives on an airplane that's been hijacked. If things don't go well, it's not looking good. I just want you to know I absolutely love you. I want you to do good. So happy to find. Same to my parents and everybody. And I just totally love you, and I'll see you later. Bye, babe.
What are those people going to do? All the elevators are blocked out.
Oh my God. So both towers are now.
Okay, I got an aircraft 6 miles east of the White House.
Hello?
Crystal City, just north of Crystal City. Just to the north of your town. Yeah, stop all departures. Pentagon just got hit. Don't put in that. God damn it, I can't even protect my NCA.
United 93, that traffic for you is 1 o'clock, 12 miles eastbound 370.
Negative contact, we're looking United 93.
United 93, Cleveland, if you hear the center ident.
I got that piece of dog. Keep remaining steady. You have the ball board.
Tuesday, 9:47 a.m.
Hi, baby. Baby, you have to listen to me carefully. I'm on a plane that's been hijacked. I'm on the plane. I'm calling from the plane. want to tell you I love you. Please tell my children that I love them very much. And I'm so sorry, babe. I hope to be able to see your face again, baby. I love you. Bye.
Number 56865. We have, I believe it is a Boeing 757. Can you see him up there, sir?
That's confirmed. It looks like he's rocking his wings.
Roger.
He's rocking back and forth.
Number 56865, I advise you stay away from that aircraft. Go north as fast as you can.
United 93. Have you got information on that yet?
Yeah, he's down.
He's down?
Yes.
When did he land?
He did not land.
Oh, he's down?
Yeah,
Bound?
somewhere up northeast of Camp David.
Sean, it's me. I just want to let you know I love you, and I'm stuck in this building in New York. There's lots of smoke, and I just wanted you to know that I love you always.
At number 2 World Trade Center, right? Ladies and students in this office, we're not ready to die, but it's getting bad.
I'm on the 83rd floor. I'm gonna die, aren't I? No. Say I'm gonna die.
Ma'am, say your prayers.
God.
We're gonna think positive because you gotta help each other get off the floor.
I'm
Now.
dying.
A new type of war. That's what it is.
Dan Butcher, I got you on the line. Where were you on 9/11?
I'll tell you where I was at on 9/11, man. I was working in a newsroom in East Texas. I was working for the Palestine Herald Press. And I remember we were all in a state of, I mean, I'll be honest, it started out as just another boring news day, you know, and then, you know, then come around, you know, shortly before 9 o'clock, you know, all hell broke loose. And we were just all, we're sitting here in the newsroom and we're watching on TV going, what in the hell are we seeing here? What's going on? And I can just remember, you know, the shock of the first plane. You're going, okay, maybe this was a plane crash. Maybe they lost control. When the second plane hit, you knew, hey, wait a minute, this is a terrorist attack. We in the newsroom, we knew immediately this is not a coincidence. We're under attack. And then from there, you know, I remember calling my wife. And my oldest kid, I have 5 kids, but my oldest was 7 months old at the time. I remember calling my wife and telling her what was going on, and actually going and getting her and my daughter and bringing her up to the newspaper because you know, it was just craziness. We actually had to have just because of the different effects, different things going on. We ended up having Texas DPS. State troopers, you know, guarding the front doors of the newspaper because different things. And it was just such a state of shock, you know, the initial. And then it turned into, throughout the day as we're working the story and more stuff is unfolding, it became anger. You know, we've been attacked. Why have we been attacked? Who has attacked us? How in the hell did they get a hold of, you know, 4 airplanes? How did they get a hold of them? How did they hijack these things? You know, and then we find out they did it with what? You know, with box knives, you know, box cutters. How in the world, you know, did this happen? And then in the days after, you remember how we came together. I think everybody remembers. You know, George W. Bush getting up onto the on the ruins of the World Trade Center with the megaphone and giving a speech to everybody there, all the workers. You know, they're still looking for bodies, and you know, holding out hope that they'll find more people alive. And then the sense of how our country came together. I didn't remember if you were a Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal. Everybody came together. And we came together as a country, you know, that we hadn't come together as a country since World War II, you know, but we were under attack, you know, and it was on our soil, on our land, and it's, you know, in looking back at it, we're here, you know, tonight we're looking at.
Here it is.
Go ahead.
I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
And they did. But you just
know, and I'll add this. It was a real surreal moment for my wife and I, because we had actually visited New York. So we had been in New York City in April of 2001. My wife was she was 9 months pregnant, I believe, at the time. She just corrected me. She's sitting behind me. She was 8 months pregnant. And we actually had been at Ground Zero. We had been at the World Trade Center. We had taken pictures. We had walked the streets of New York and had a wonderful time, and remembered how welcoming the people were, how nice people were to see us, and everything, just how vibrant the city was. And then here we were, a few months later on September 11th, and I'm actually pulling out pictures from from our trip to New York to use for before and after pictures. To use a before, because I'd taken this really, really beautiful panoramic shot from one of the boats coming back in from Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty, coming back and looking at the Manhattan skyline. And so we used that picture as a before, and then the after picture of the towers not being there anymore. And I had to just stop. I just stopped, and I was thinking, my wife and I, a different set of circumstances and stuff. We could have been there when this happened, and we could have been in New York. And I really felt, having got to know a lot of people in New York City while we were there, I really felt for everybody there. And it was just, like I said, even looking back today, I get goosebumps, man. And it was one of those. I always compare this, because the first major story I ever covered as a young journalist was the Challenger disaster, and I remember that was the first real big story that I ever covered. And then I looked, and then I was looking back at how that made me feel, and then versus, here I am now in another defining moment of my journalism career. I'm right in the middle of 9/11 and going, man, this has changed our world. It's changed our country. It's changed all of us forever, man.
The Challenger disaster was in 1986.
Yeah.
And a plane hitting a building in New York was not unprecedented. Back in 1945, a B-25 Mitchell hit the Empire State Building. So something like that, having occurred before, was not unheard of, yet once can be a strange anomaly. 2 times, and you know that you're just about in the middle of a war. We got a lot of places. You got a lot of places that we're going to go tonight. First, because I haven't spoken to you in so long. I used to revel in the fact that Dan and I would talk, and then when Dan would call in, I would never tell Dan what we're going to talk about. And it could be anything. It could be everything. It could be just a few things. And we never really sat down and discussed any of it before we began speaking on air. I always thought that was a whole lot of fun. But before we do this, in the intervening time, and it's been probably, I'm guessing, 9 months, 10 months since last we spoke.
Well, since we last tried, but the last time I've actually been. Now, and I'll get to that in just a second, just because of how this started tonight. And I couldn't believe, why, how in the hell is his call going straight to voicemail? Everything's hooked up right. And I thought, and here's what things, BZ had actually called about 15 minutes before, Actually, BZ's attorney called.
My attorney called
15 minutes before, wanting to do a sound check. It went to voicemail. I thought, well, maybe I missed the call. I'm sitting here, and BZ's saying, I'm trying to call, and I'm looking, and The phone is not ringing. It's not buzzing. I'm making sure I've got it turned. Nothing is happening.
Yeah, it's
I'm
technology.
This is impossible.
It's technology. Dan
BZ.
Butcher, it's technology, me, and you trying to get together. Tonight is going to be interesting. What I want to do is I want to catch up on things that have occurred to you. We'll do that in a second because I discovered something in the texts. This is kind of a last-second thing. I happen to see Dan on another post somewhere in social media, either on Twitter or Facebook, probably Facebook. And I thought, whoa, I haven't talked to Dan Butcher in a long time. I think this was Monday or Tuesday, and I thought, I know it's short notice. What the hell? Let's call Dan. Let's get a hold of Dan. And I did with some text and say, hey, Dan, I know this is late, but what do you think about Thursday night? You said, hey, sure, you bet, fine. Now, since then, BZ, this, and this has happened to me. And what? You say, what? So first, I want you to tell people your website and what you do. After that, then, I want to get into the what part of what's happened to you. Not apparently once, but twice. So first tell folks where they can find you and basically what you do.
But I tell you what, you could, if you Google highplainspundit.com, you're going to pull it up all over Google. But highplainspundit.com, we started it out way back in 2009, so we're fixing to head into our 12th year of doing this.
Congratulations, cool.
And, we started out as just a simple political blog. Over the years, we evolved into a full-blown news and information website with a big nationwide following. And we were averaging 8-9 million page views a month. And so everything's rocking along, and we started a podcasting network, which is High Plains Pundit Radio, which is also part of highplainspundit.com. And then I launched my own podcast. We're going to get into that in just a minute. The High Plains Pundit podcast. And so, then over the years, we just developed it and we maintained it, even though we had started out as a political website. We had moved over to second best man in news business. We'll talk about that too. But anyway, we'd gotten away from being just a pure political website to where and even to this day we continue to use. I love it when people call me just a blogger. Well, I'm like, okay, well, I'm just a blogger with a really good following. That's the way you want to go. You want to try to do that. But even though we were a news and information website, a full-blown media company, we still use, that open blogging type format because it allows us to do so much more with interviews, with news reporting, with audio, video. It just really opens up, and we're able to do so much more for our readers and listeners and such. And so about 2000, at the beginning of 2018, I got this bright idea because our local news market was just dismal for our regional. And so if you'll know where we're based in the Texas Panhandle, the Amarillo, Texas, and Lubbock, Texas area, which is the home to Texas Tech University. Okay, this is Red Raider country where I'm at. But anyway, and so we decided that we were going to kind of revamp things and that we needed to have more of a regional focus. So we switched and we literally scrapped our national footprint that we had, and almost this really started over from scratch. And became a regional website. And I'll be honest, we tanked our audience at first. We went from 8 million page views a month. The first time I came out with the regional, we were down to 250,000 page views. So you can see where we are literally starting to build the audience all over. And I think my wife, she's shaking her head, kind of looking at me, going,
"What were you thinking?"
But it's all worked out in the long run because we even became more it really pushed us to the forefront with our news coverage and what we do, and then slowly but surely, a lot of our our regional and local audience was there, started coming in. We got a lot of our national audience back in. And something very interesting happened. We also got a large state following here in the state of Texas, which we'd had a following here, but much larger now. So here we are 2 years after that, and we have all of our audience back, plus some, being focused as a regional news and information media company. And I'm very proud of what we do. I think we do a good job of being fair and balanced. I'm not afraid. I'll always tell people I'm not here to be to be somebody's puppet, to cheer people on. I'm here to be a checks and balances. I'm going to be very critical of elected officials if I need to be. I will praise political officials if they need it. I will stand by Donald Trump if he does. If he's doing the right thing. I'm not afraid to criticize if need be. But hey, that's what we're supposed to do in the news business. We're supposed to be the checks and balances of the government, to be there, to hold our elected officials, to hold our city officials accountable. We're there to bring you the news and information to the best of our ability. You and I have talked before. I absolutely. Everybody has their different things they want to call it. You want to call it fake news. I heard Sean use a different term last night. You hear me use the term, I hate agenda journalism. I hate people that use agenda journalism. I hate when news organizations mask editorial content on their news page, then not label it as such. So you'll hear me be an outspoken critic of that. I will also be a very strong defender of a media outlet if they're doing the right thing. And you've heard me talk about this before. I get the opportunity to talk to young journalists a lot of times, and I'll tell them. I always ask them, what they think what this job is. And I get a lot of different answers and stuff, and usually it's wrong. And I always tell them, your job, once again, is to bring people news and information, to follow through on the story, no matter where it takes you. And the story might change directions a few times. It may even circle and come back on you, but you always follow through to the conclusion, especially if you're doing an investigative report. And don't be afraid to follow through. And it's not your job to make people like you. It's not your job to make people hate you. Because, in the news business, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you don't report on the story, people aren't going to like you. If you do report on the story, guess what? They ain't going to like you. So, you have to be very thick-skinned to be in this business. You have to be very thick-skinned to do what you're doing, man. Whether you're doing a commentary and interviews like you do. I get to do both, man. I get to do news. I also get to do my podcast where I get to do and expand out a little bit more and do the interview side. And, I'm one of these guys that was lucky enough back in 2015 to not once but twice I got to be part of a group of podcasters I got to actually interview then candidate Donald Trump and ask a few questions, and I got to do that a couple of times. That was really cool to get to do that. And I always tell people, whether you like him or you hate him or you're indifferent or whatever, with Trump, what you see is what you get. It is what it is. He is what he is, and you're either going to love him, you're going to hate him. I don't think there's any in between there a lot of times.
No, I want to talk about that too when we get back. I want to talk about independents, Republicans. There's so much stuff I want to talk about. By the way, a warning, Dan Butcher, that Sack Heads SHAUN is threatening to come in about a half hour at the top of the hour. So I just want to warn you that you may hear Sack Heads SHAUN come in just a little bit.
I got a good look at Sean last night. He looked like he'd been to rehab and back or something. I don't know what he was growing on his face or
You know what?
but man,
I'll let you bring that up with him. In the meantime,
I will bring that up.
I got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk to Dan Butcher, the second best man in the news business, according to Sack Heads SHAUN, about what occurred to him recently, twice apparently, and then we're going to get into a breaking story, another breaking story, and then we're off to some audio cuts that I happen to have. I'm BZ, he's Dan Butcher. You're in the Saloon. We'll be right back after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunetz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunetz.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
This is Shannon Wright of The Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Mike's not here, so I gotta talk fast. You gotta join us. Fall season. Getting ready to start up with a whole bunch of new stuff. News and food and politics and sports and entertainment and a whole bunch of stuff. But wait, Mike's coming. I gotta go. Remember, Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media, Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. Make sure you tune in.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Join me, Jack Alexander, for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the issues affecting the USA. I fearlessly take on the issues that everyone else is too scared to touch. The Jack Alexander Experiment podcast is available wherever good podcasts can be found, like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. The Jack Alexander Experiment, because it's not a matter of left versus right, it's a matter of right versus wrong.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Featuring the effervescent contrarian Sack Heads Clint, plus the unrestrained bulbosity of BZ, the Sack Heads Against Tyranny is a real chat show. Doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts, you can listen every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please note, some contents may have settled during shipping. Member FDIC, batteries not included, warranty void in Montenegro.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I am BZ, the Bloviating Zeppelin. I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. Always spelled it with a K tonight. Where we literally are 2 miles east of the locus of evil on the entire left coast, the Bill Mill, the Capitol building in downtown Sacramento at 10th and L Streets. While you're here, if you do me a favor, pound out the share on YouTube. Hit that little share button, share, just like a sharing Sherrington. If you're on Spreaker, hit the share button for the show. If you're on Facebook, hit the share button for the show. Share lugubriously. Here, there, thither, and everywhere. I fail to promote my show sufficiently, so share wherever you happen to be watching or listening to the show right now. I would greatly appreciate that. We're talking tonight in the first hour, and maybe if we're lucky enough in the second hour, although we will have Sack Heads SHAUN here in the second hour, who may shoo Dan Butcher away, but I hope not. We're going to be speaking to Dan Butcher and have been speaking to Dan Butcher in the first half hour. Dan told us where he was during 9/11. Here's where I was. I was a relatively new, although not all that new, sergeant in my department who happened to be working the comm center, dispatch, all the call takers. And it was a Tuesday morning, early in the morning. Now, in the call center, we would have televisions on, and people would be watching the news. Obviously, the sound would be off because the people are taking calls, etc. Right after the first plane hit, and not one TV was tuned to the news at the time, and I never heard, I do not know to this day who called me, but somebody called me at the S1 position, and the S1 is the Sergeant's Supervisory Board over all the people that are in the comm center, and if it's all full, because I was working the end of a graveyard at the time, there can be up to like 20 people in there. 2 dispatchers at the time, and then any number of call takers, 10, 15 call takers. Well, Tuesday morning, it's during the week, it's not the weekend, and I got a phone call. Picked it up, Sergeant BZS1, and this person was yelling at me, turn on the television, turn on the news, do it right now, turn on the TV, click, and they hung up. And so I called for one of the call takers over, and I said, go change the TV if you can. Something's happening on the news. So we were riveted. We were absolutely riveted, watching what was going on. And the funny thing also was, during that time, now, at the time that this is occurring, here it's, I think it was, 9:30 in the morning, something like that, Dan Butcher, right around in there?
I believe so.
So that's 6:30 in the morning.
When the second plane hit?
Yeah, it was right, because it was about a half hour, 45 minutes between
it's right at a half hour.
Yeah. So it's
sort of before 9 for the first one.
It's right around 6 o'clock in the morning, which customarily the comm center would be getting an assload of burglar alarm calls like we do every morning during the week, because the people are entering their businesses, they're screwing with the alarm, and they set off the alarm, and I don't know how to operate it, blah, blah, blah. Once this happened, the entire comm center was as quiet as I have ever heard it. You could hear a pin drop in the comm center. All the calls had stopped. Not one for almost an hour. And that's where I was during 9/11. And I will never forget the person who called screaming at me, turn on the TV. And the thing that's, I'm sure, never happened before or since is all the calls coming to 911 and regular calls for service to Sacramento County stopped. They stopped. It was freaky. And just as soon as everybody saw the second aircraft hit, everyone knew this is terrorism. We're at war. I just had to throw this in. So we're talking to Dan Butcher. Dan, things have happened to you in the interim time that I last spoke to you. Maybe you can address some of those things, please.
Oh, wow. Where do we start with this? So, that just kind of going back, you were talking about the last time I was actually on your show. It has actually been the middle of 2019.
Holy crap.
Since the last time I was on the show. Maybe towards Jane was thinking she thought it was maybe March to April that I was actually on the show. And it was for
successful.
A few interviews. So, yeah. Well, anyway, so to kind of make a long story short, because we can talk about this, back in January 2019, I took a really nasty fall down in the basement of our house. I fell about 7 feet down to the landing and ended up hitting my head on a solid concrete wall. And it ended up being a major rescue effort. We had first responders from the police department, from the county. We had from our city fire department, from our county fire department. They actually had to call in where I live here in the Texas Panhandle. I live about 10 minutes from Paladuro Canyon, which is actually the second largest canyon in the country behind the Grand Canyon. And they actually had to call in the rescue unit that they use when they've had a hiker fall down in the canyon and stuff. They actually had to call the rescue in. And so I've got a 250 square foot basement. So down there's 10 firemen. If you can imagine this, there's 10 firemen. And I don't know, my brother, who's a lieutenant on the fire department in Amarillo, Texas, was actually the first person on the scene. He happened to be down here working as a paramedic, as a side job, on the weekend. He actually was the first one here. So your brother being the first one they're seeing you thinking you're dead is kind of traumatic for him, but it took them an hour and a half to get me in the rescue basket. They actually ended up hooking part of the winch that they used up to one of my Suburbans and winching me out of this basement and taking me to the hospital and stuff. And anyway, I ended up suffering some head injuries and some internal injuries that led to me having to have some major surgery later on in the year. And that was kind of right before. And the last time I came on your show was right after I had to have all of the surgery to repair all the internal damage that happened. And, but later on, I ended up, a lot of people don't know, I also coach soccer, and I was at a soccer practice on a Monday night, and I started feeling like just really like crap. And I told my wife, I said, something's not right here. And so ended up going home, trying to rest. And I woke up and I told Jack, something's wrong. I mean, seriously wrong here. So ended up rushing me to the hospital and found out that I was having a very serious pancreatitis, a case of pancreatitis. And the pancreatitis was so bad at that point, your pancreas is normally a level like 60 something. Mine was elevated to 15,000. So it was very inflamed. And I was in the early stages of my organs starting to shut down. And so for the first 48 hours that I ended up being in the hospital for 8 days that time. The first 48 hours, they didn't know if I was going to live or die. So my wife is sitting here, holding vigil over me, friends and family, saying their thoughts and their prayers, and saying, hey, we hope Dan's going to make it, through this. And thankfully I did. And I was very, very, very fortunate through that situation. It's been a long recovery. I'm still continuing to recover from that. So I have a lot of side effects from the fall, hitting my head and dealing with this. Now here's a kicker. And BZ and Sean will attest to this because Sean's known me for Sean's known me for a better part of 10 years. Through the whole time that I was in the ICU, I'd have emergency surgery too, so that they could, correct the problem that was causing the inflammation. And when we came out, we never missed publishing High Plains Pundit. High Plains Pundit continued to publish, And I told my wife, I said, if I'm going to go out, I at least want to go out, trying to finish. So she would bring my computer over to me, and I'd try to type a few words, and then she would finish it for me. And then while I was asleep and out, she would come over and she would take over. And she wrote a lot of different things, and she was doing a lot of the editing for our contributors and stuff. So we never stopped publishing, even all through that. And so after I got out of the hospital from that, about 8 weeks later, I started feeling really bad again. I'm like, what in the world is going on? So I ended up having to go back to the emergency room and found out that I had blood clots on my lungs. Now, BZ, you've worked in law enforcement, and you have some medical knowledge and different things like that. And when the doctor comes in and they tell you that you've got blood clots on your lungs, it just takes everything out of you. You're like, I'm dead. And that was my first thought about it. I'm not walking out of this hospital. And this was some more side effects of everything else that had happened leading up to that. So I'm in the hospital another 4 days, and more thoughts and prayers coming from our friends, family, from our readers. My readers, we got emails by the thousands, and messages on Facebook, people texting, my wife and I, sending thoughts and prayers and stuff. And once again, through a little miracle, I ended up walking out of the hospital after having blood clots in my lungs. And an amazing group of doctors from Texas Tech who continue to take care of me are leading me back. And so here I am today, a year and a half after the first incident that started all of this, and I'm still recovering. And you'll notice tonight, you'll hear me kind of slur my speech a little bit. It's not because I'm drinking.
Oh, come on.
You'll hear me have to stop.
Come on, it's fine Texas bourbon.
Yeah, I tell you, I'll have to think my thoughts out a little bit. And you might hear me correct myself a little bit on some of my thoughts and my voice and what have you. But and I may be a little slower with my thought process, coming back with my answers and answering the questions. So I ask everybody to be a little patient with me tonight as I do that. But here I am tonight, a walking testament that miracles still exist in this world, that good still exists in this world. And I continue. I'm finally back up to the full, to a place right now to where, I'm starting to get back into doing it. A lot of people ask why I shelved my podcast. Well, it's because I couldn't do it. I physically could not do it. I mentally could not do it. And I'm trying to go back to the last interview that, 9 months ago when I came on with you. I don't know if that was if it was a technical thing or if it was just one of those things where I just mentally couldn't get through the interview. And I'm thinking it was more that than it was the technical stuff. I'm kind of looking back, and Jane's kind of, telling me what happened that night, saying I was kind of fumbling with the phone and the different things like that. And it was just kind of a mental lapse on my part.
You had to go.
Stirred it up.
You just said you had to leave. It was, you just had to leave. And okay, well, that's what happened.
I think that's what it was. I think that's what it was. Is that I just couldn't really physically and mentally get through it. My mind was such a jumble, and you were being so patient. And I think you were kind of like, Dan's not all here. Something's not right. And you were being very patient and very gracious with that. But you know what? I'm here to tell you. Everything's back, and I'm looking forward. My own podcast, we're going to be relaunching it here in the next couple of weeks. I've been planning on getting it going in time for the presidential election. That was kind of our goal, and I think we're going to make that. And I'm really looking forward to it. And you know what? I'm looking forward to coming back on here a lot more, man, because I have absolutely missed.
Oh, you and I had a ton of fun on this.
Being on with you, being on with Sean, and all this thing, because this is I do podcasting. you know what, the media thing, that's what I do for a living. The podcasting I do because I enjoy it, you know, and it's kind of an outlet to be able to discuss things that I wouldn't be able to discuss otherwise. But anyway, you know, to everybody out there that's listening tonight, you know, I'm a true testament, you know, that, hey, man, you know, just don't ever give up, keep fighting. And, you know, hey, God decided it wasn't my time, and I've got a few other things to do in this world. And so here I am, and you know what? It's time to, you know, light some fires under some folks, man.
Light some fires and kick some tires. Let me make a comparison, if I can, Dan Butcher. You told me in text that, let me see if I can actually find the specific text. You said something like, I died on the table twice, or I died twice.
I almost passed away twice is what happened. And that's what I was alluding to. You know, I literally was fighting for my life twice, you know. And, you know, the first time we went in the hospital, let me tell you, I'll tell this story. I had a doctor, Dr. Flores, who would come in every day. And especially the first 2 days, he would come in and he would sit with me and he would hold my hand. Now, how many doctors, when they come in and do rounds, if any of y'all have been in the hospital, when doctors come around and do rounds, they come in, they give you an update for about 30 seconds, maybe a minute.
Yeah, if
they've
that.
got interns with you, the residents with you, and they're out of there. I had two doctors, Dr. Contreras and Dr. Flores. Both of them would come in, especially Dr. Flores. But Dr. Flores would come in, and he would sit down. He'd hold my hand. He'd sit there and talk to me for over an hour. Because I fully think he had it in his mind that he was trying more to comfort me than knowing that I was going to. I think he knew that. I think he had it in my mind. He was trying to keep me calm, comfort me, comfort my wife, because I really do think they thought I was going to pass away, that I was going to die in the hospital. And so that, and he would come in. How many doctors would come in and pray with you?
In California, zero, unless they happen to, be a next door neighbor or something like that.
Exactly.
Hey, Dan Butcher, let me ask you this. I've had a guy on my show before, a number of times, 6, 7, 8 times. Now, the guy's name is Alan Thomas. Alan Thomas
I know of Alan.
Okay. If you remember, Alan Thomas did, in fact, die on the table twice. Mm-hmm. And essentially what he said, he had some sense before that, but essentially what he said is after those two incidents, he became a lot more sensitive to some things around him. Uh-huh. Did you lose consciousness in any kind of a similar fashion? And if so, have those incidents had any effect that way like Alan or any other way in your life?
I think Alan actually had an actual near-death experience.
No,
he actually died.
He died twice, and they had to bring him back.
Okay, so he had an experience, where you hear people say, hey, I floated above the operating table and I saw them trying to save my life, then I was drawn back, or I knew I died and then I was walking down, and I saw a light and they came and tell me, nope, it's not your time, you need to turn around and go back. Those type of stories. That didn't happen to me. Now what I did experience, because I was in and out, because there was so much pain and different things like that. I will tell you this: I had a real sense of comfort, a real sense of, I'll tell people this: I'm one of these people that's not afraid to die. And the reason I'm not afraid to die is I'm real secure in my faith, and I'm pretty secure in where I'm going if I die. So death does not scare me. I'm not afraid of death. Now, we all want to live as long as we possibly can. And, I got 5 kids, so a lot of people depend on me. And so did I want to die? No. And so I felt this real keen, what I was feeling was this real keen sense of to fight. I was angry. I was mad, because I don't want to die this way, I didn't want to.
Right.
And I had so many people depending on me. But on the same time, I had this real sense of comfort that if I did die, that, my wife, that my wife would be able to take care of my children. And that and I'm one of these people thinks that I'm 50. I just turned 52 years old this year.
Oh, you're a
I've
kid.
had the best 50. Yeah, I'll tell you, I've had the best. Sean Lewis is a kid. I've had the best.
That's true.
52. I've had the best 52 years of my life, and I've got great kids, and so I had that sense of I've accomplished everything. If I was to die right now, my legacy would be my children. The things I've done. I forget high place pundit, forget anything like this, but my legacy is my kids and raising them and my future grandchildren, and I would continue to live through them. They would continue to tell the crazy stories about their dad and different things like that. And then and having that sense of being there, that I had raised my kids right, that, that just put this comfort and ease on me to where, hey, if it all ends here, I'm good, and then the second time when I went in the hospital with the blood clots, that one was even scarier than the first 8 days, because when you hear when the doctor came and said you've got blood clots, I'm like, I'm dead. I'd already determined that I was, but then again, I have Dr. Flores, Dr. Contreras, all these doctors, same doctors again, taking care of me. So the sense of ease, and I'm thinking, okay, so did I accomplish? Maybe I accomplished what I needed to, over the last few weeks that I needed to, and so here so then after that, everything's just kind of like, so I kind of. To put a long story short, kind of the sense I've got, it's definitely changed me. There's a lot of things that have changed, a lot of things that have changed for me personally. There's a lot of things that I can no longer do. I found that there's a lot of things I can do now. That's the one that's really interesting. But
okay, like what?
There's a lot of things I can do. What can I not do?
Yeah, what can't you do? And then you discovered that you can do some things. What are those?
Well, here's two things. I used to, and Sean will remember this. I love to work on cars, and I used to be able to fix almost anything on a car. Okay, and so here I am now. I've got. My 15-year-old son has this pickup truck that he's bought, getting ready for when he turns 16, and so we've been trying to help him work on it and fix it up and stuff. And I have found that stuff I used to be able to do no problem, I can't fix. I can't diagnose the problem, And so something that used to just be secondhand to me, like, working on cars, something I really enjoyed doing. I didn't do it for it. I just did it for fun. It's no longer enjoyable because it's very frustrating, very difficult for me, where it wasn't before. Now, on the flip side, here's something very interesting. I used to be able to type about, I'm a very slow typer. I used to be able to type about 30 words a minute. And now all of a sudden, I can't quite type as fast as my wife, but now all of a sudden it's double. I can do 60, 65 words a minute. Where did that come from? It's those little things like that you notice, and you're like, okay, so how did this change my brain that I could do this? Here's another thing. I used to be able to pull quotes. I could pull quotes from people that I had interviewed or that I had remembered off the top of my head, and then if I needed to pull an old quote for a story or something like that during an interview. I used to just be able to pull it out of my head. I used to be able to, when I interviewed people, to just remember everything they said and just type it down and go. Now I found that I can't do that anymore. I can't pull just quotes. Anytime I do interviews now, everything has to be, of course, I always recorded everything to begin with, but now I actually have to go back and use, where I wasn't very reliant on it and just would kind of use it as a double check make sure that I had all the exact words and everything from the quote. Now I have to use the recording of an interview verbatim and type it as I'm listening to it, and that type of stuff. And so it's a lot of memory stuff that, kind of affects you a little bit. And so it's just little things here and there that you notice that have changed you from an experience like that. And how would it not? I think anybody that's been through something like that, it's definitely going to change them dramatically. In some ways, it's been a lot better. In other ways, been very, 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 I'll be honest, very frustrating and just very irritating, man. It just pisses you off.
This is a perfect time for a break because we're up to the top of the hour break. Folks, we've been talking to Dan Butcher, and we will continue to talk to Dan Butcher. Sack Heads SHAUN is ambling into the room in an ambulator kind of fashion. We'll be back. Yeah, like that. We'll be back right after this, and we'll be continuing with me. I'm BZ. This is the Saloon. That's Dan Butcher. Sack Heads SHAUN will be here, and we'll be right back after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Southern Sense is conservative talk with Annie, the radio chick you bellows as host, and C.S. Bennett co-host. Informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect. You never know where they'll go, but you'll love the journey. Annie is a top conservative host on Top Talk Radio and features some of the finest guests packed with important politicians and newsmakers. Listen every Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, noon to 3 Pacific, on the SHR Media Network. Remember, Southern Sense is common sense.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York. The Lid himself, Jeff Dunnett. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunnett.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Good evening. Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show is featured on the SHR Media Network every Tuesday and Thursday night for 2 hours at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific. Whilst manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, BZ continues to radically change the world of leftists, one diaper at a time. Stop balancing your checkbooks. Stop cleaning your fish tanks. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show is your magnet for truth, justice, obesity, a darkened studio, and late-night freedom. No United States of America freedoms were abridged in the making of this ad.
This is Shannon Wright.
And this is Michael Wright.
Reminding you to listen
to The Right Way with Shannon and Mike.
Every Monday through Thursday.
7 to 9 a.m.
Right here on SHRmedia.com.
Join me, Jack Alexander, for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the issues affecting the USA. I fearlessly take on the issues that everyone else is too scared to touch. The Jack Alexander Experiment podcast is available wherever good podcasts can be found, like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. The Jack Alexander Experiment, because it's not a matter of left versus right, it's a matter of right versus wrong.
After 6 years covering terror and corruption, the unpleasant blind guy is making a change. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker and YouTube through SHR Media and on the Western Free Radio Network as I team up with Jeff Mitchell, host of the English Defense League radio show on blogtalkradio.com. Check show pages for airtimes. It's the Unpleasant Blind Guy.
On EDL Radio.
There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Featuring the effervescent contrarian Sack Heads Clint, plus the unrestrained bulbosity of BZ, the Sack Heads Against Tyranny is a real chat show. Doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts, you can listen every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please note, some contents may have settled during shipping. Member FDIC, batteries not included, warranty void in Montenegro.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is now hour 2 of the bloviating Zeppelins and Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. Right here, adjacent, directly in front of, across from Sack Heads SHAUN, unique, one each, SHAUN, Sack Heads. Oh, and I also forgot to say, do me a favor, share like crazy. If you're on Spreaker, share that. If you're on Facebook, share that. If you're on YouTube, share that. If you happen to be listening on Zephron, share from Zephron. Eventually, it'll get here.
If you're on the John, share that.
Share sharing is caring. Look, here's Sack Heads SHAUN.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
It's a real pleasure to be here with the second best newsman in the business.
Hey, Dan Butcher. Hey, Dan.
Danny, nice to see you, sir.
Well, yeah, you can't see me, but can see you.
Oh, you just think I can't. It is an honor to be live on the air with literally hundreds of years of life experience with you two, and I appreciate it.
Wow.
To be able to share that with me and the listeners. It was great. Tonight we can talk about how to mill corn.
We can argue about who created the wheel.
Right. All these great things. What Jefferson was like in person, Thomas Jefferson, I think
exactly.
That would be great.
He had terrible acne and delayed borborygmus. The guy couldn't walk into a room without farting. That much I do remember.
It was. I just appreciate that very, very much. So, look, age before beauty. Go right ahead, BZ.
Okay, fine. I'll take you up on that. There's a story that just came out today, and I find it very interesting. You guys remember the journalist named John Solomon?
Yes.
And a pretty damn good journalist, but he used to write for The Hill. Well, he got kicked off The Hill because they perceived that he was a little bit too equitable in terms of his writing. He didn't lean sufficiently left. It's kind of like Juan Williams getting kicked off of NPR so Juan could be a massive leftist on The Five at 5 p.m.
Right.
So John Solomon is now writing for this place called Just the News. And it is that. They came out with a story today, which I found kind of interesting. Now, nobody's paying attention to this stuff anymore, but it's also revelatory as to what has happened in the past. The headline is, Mueller's investigators accidentally wiped over a dozen phones before turning them over to the IG's office.
Well, what else would you do?
Yeah, numerous phones were wiped after... I'm sure this was where the mistake was. Numerous phones were wiped after too many incorrect password attempts were made, reports show. You know, because nobody writes down a password, and up until the point where they had to be turned in, somehow, magically, mystically, no one forgot their password until it was the time for those phones to be
I'm going to disprove this theory right now.
Okay, go ahead.
BZ.
Sir.
How long have you had a touchscreen cell phone?
What was my first? Well, I had some. Well, not a touch screen. Okay, I think the first touchscreen phone was an Apple 3G.
Okay, and since then,
listen to Dan.
Since that time,
diss me. Oh wow!
Have you ever had a phone blank itself because you've entered the password too many times? Wrong.
Never. And I am the world's... Dan knows.
This is my point.
Yes.
If it hasn't happened to you,
then...
there is no way it happened to anybody else. ...
It's like, are you kidding me, folks? Really?
I know Danny has a lot to say about this, but look, this is... Actually, I'll let Danny go first for once. Go ahead, Danny.
A lot to say about this. Well, okay, so take the headline. Anything with accidentally in parentheses is going to tell you, guys, whenever you're dealing anything with this investigation, whenever you're dealing with anything, you kind of take it with a grain of salt. And, nothing happens accidentally. This was done on purpose. I think we can all agree.
Yeah. You doubting Thomas. Gosh.
I'm gonna doubt it. It's
Well,
it's just like a certain person that accidentally hung himself. Stuff like that. And on a serious side, there's going to be people that are going to go out and say, this is another crazy-ass conspiracy theory. There's a lot of crazy-ass conspiracy theories out there. We can all agree on that. And the problem is, when you actually have something like this kind of gets, kind of glossed over a little bit. We're making light of it and stuff like that. Then again, you're going, how many times have we seen this kind of crap in any investigation that we've been doing? Okay? Going all back to...
Especially when the Democrats are the target.
Servers. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. This is a continuing theme that we're seeing where something accidentally happens. A server accidentally, gets swiped and disappears. Phones accidentally.
But Danny,
certain guy accidentally hangs himself. I'm getting sick of the word accidental.
But Danny, here's another thing too that I really, really immediately thought of. These are federal phones. They are not their personal property.
Yes.
And they are backed up. I am guessing they're probably Apple, because I think a majority of the federal law enforcement agencies use Apple, as we learned.
But Sean, Hillary's servers were backed up. What happened to those backups?
Exactly. But these all go to a cloud. These all go to a cloud. This is how we get it. So where's the cloud? Right. So if you are... That right there shows that there is absolute malice aforethought with the deletion of these phones, is you've taken steps to make sure even the backup disappears. So it's not accidentally. Accidentally is oh shit, I accidentally deleted a text message I meant to save. This was, oh shit, I accidentally went through and went down to settings, reset phone, delete phone, put in all the numbers.
Accidentally is I accidentally dropped my phone in the toilet after taking a crap and didn't flush it. That's accidentally.
Yeah.
And now that's a gross analogy, but it's actually a good comparison to this.
But it's reality.
There's nothing accident about it. It's reality.
Yeah.
Here's what you guys are going to both appreciate. The story says, newly released records from the DOJ show multiple high-ranking members of Robert Mueller's special investigation into the Russian conspiracy wiped their phones before handing them over to the DOJ's Office of Inspector General. And again, here's Tom Fitton doing the work of everyone else that everyone else should be doing. The documents obtained by lawsuit by Judicial Watch show more than 24 phones were apparently purged of information before being handed over to the IG, some having allegedly mistakenly wiped and others had been reassigned prior to the IG's review. Numerous phones were accidentally wiped of data because the phone's owner allegedly tried to enter the wrong password multiple times, the documents indicate.
It's bull.
I find this interesting. At least one phone that belongs to FBI lawyer Lisa Page had simply been, quote, restored to factory settings upon receipt by the Inspector General. Question for the two of you. Sean, I remember you specifically saying this because I was an advocate of something is going to get done. But I remember you saying probably late last year or early in January that don't place your eggs in the Inspector General's report. Don't place your eggs in the Durham investigation or you're going to be disappointed.
Yes. Well, and that's because I'm a genius when it comes to politics and investigations.
Right.
Now, but the reality of the situation is they knew.
Where was the laughing from Dan?
he can't when it's accurate. Look, they all knew that once the Mueller investigation ended and nothing came out of it, which they knew nothing was going to come out of it, they knew they had bupkis. They had to go in cover-up mode. Why was the Mueller investigation done? Why were all these things done before Trump got into office? Because they never thought Trump would get into office, right? So they did, once it was apparent that was going to happen, they started covering all their try to cover all their tracks prior to the election. After the election, they were hanging their hat on the Mueller report. They thought Trump would be gone and they would have plenty of time to kind of settle things back down and keep working on the Pence administration, etc. But once they realized nothing was going to stick, which, by the way, more FBI agents has been indicted after that than there were from the actual Russia investigation, but that's neither here nor there. They never thought it was going to. So once they did, they went into oh shit mode. What happens? You've seen it on the movies, but what happens when the IRS starts to raid the business? Right, everything starts getting burned, shredded, destroyed.
Yeah, you bet.
Right, and this is exactly what happened. They knew it was coming to an end. They knew all of that stuff was going to be legally subject to scrutiny and admissible to court if need be later on. It's a federal phone. Once you type and use that for anything, you sign that phone out essentially saying that it's not your property and anything you do with it can be audited.
And yet people still seem to think that they have a proprietary use to the phone when they don't. It's the same with all the other phones that we're dealing with since the Hillary Clinton era, emails, etc.
Yep.
Unfortunately, Just the News kind of sort of buried the lead on this, which is a little weird because the very last paragraph says, among the special counsel members whose phones were wiped was Andrew Weissman, one of the probe's chief investigators. Weissman entered the phone's password this is an air quote, this if you're watching, too many times and wiped the phone, the documents state.
So I want to know what type of phone it was and how many times does it take to get that password reset in before it goes?
Well, and what happened to your IT tech guy who should be able to go in because of various attributes and reset the phone?
Mm-hmm.
Someone always has an attribute higher than you.
Hey, guys, let me throw this out there to you. And I think every one of us, people have different ways that they put passwords on their phones. Some people have actual passwords they want to sit there and type in. Other people have the little connect the dot things. I think you see where you do the little shapes and stuff like that on your touch screen. Okay, tell me, I know for a fact that I've had the pattern password on my phone before, and I've forgotten the pattern. Okay, and I sit here and I do the pattern, 2 or 3 times, and it locks me out of my phone for the next minute or 2 minutes. Okay, and if I do it again, it does that. Never once. Now here's what's funny. Never once did it permanently lock me out of my phone. Never once did it restore my factory settings. Never once did it, blow my phone up, completely clear the phone out, different things like that. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then in all honesty, if I did permanently forget it, hey, guess what? I could probably give it to one of my kids who would sit here like a Rubik's Cube and in another 5 seconds figure the pattern out, right? And so, and here's the other thing. regardless of how secret your phone is, whether it's a government phone or your personal phone, everybody always uses something that's familiar to them as a password. Too much, people always say, don't do that, but people do it anyway. So I can guarantee you all of the passwords were either a familiar shape or a familiar password that they would remember and not forget. Just so that leads to, once again, the BS factor. When you're covering this type of stuff, as a member of the media, and you're trying to track stuff down, and all of a sudden stuff keeps mysteriously disappearing, and you run into things like this. This is just common sense.
It stinks.
It's a cover-up.
Well, look.
Conspiracy. They're hiding something.
Smell test.
Just a quick search. If you have an Apple phone, you get 10 attempts. They start spacing out after the first couple.
Right.
Then it's a minute, then 5 minutes. The timeout escalates such as it would need to hit the reset is 3 hours to enter 10 incorrect passcodes.
Let me ask you guys this question, because honestly, I don't know, being the techno dummy that I am, the techno Luddite. People apparently have Apple phones now because Apple is very secure. You got to go get a warrant, and even then, Apple sometimes won't break their phone for you. It used to be under Hillary Clinton back then. BlackBerries were the thing. I don't know. Does BlackBerry even make a phone? And is that what is de rigueur now for security people? Or is it the Apple phone? Well, I honestly don't know.
BlackBerry's still around.
And they're still around, but not near what they were. I think everybody has. I'll be honest. There's a few people that might be carrying around a flip phone still, but but most people, I think everybody, because here's the thing, you got to remember, our phones have become, we've become to where we cannot detach ourselves from our phones. They've become such a big part of our lives, if it's for personal or if it's for business. I'll tell you right now, I am so dependent on my job, with my phone. Right now I'm sitting here, I'm mic'd up running my phone through a soundboard, so we could do an interview tonight. At the same time, I'm also answering text. Here it is, 11:30. I'm still getting text back from different information I was searching for some stories, getting some quotes back and different things like that. Also use it for personal, for pictures, for live streaming video if I'm out in the field. So we're so attached to those phones now. They actually become such a big part of our lives that, once again, when you're sitting here, they're trying to say that, somebody forgot their password or they did this or did that. You can't say that because we're so dependent on them, especially our smartphones, for more than just making calls, for more than just texting, for everything loose. People remember the old Rolodex, all of my appointments, all over my reminders. I have alarms that go off constantly all day reminding me of different things. They're so attached to us that when you see a story like this, you just scratch your head and go,
how the hell's that happen?
Yeah.
Danny.
How did that happen?
And fingerprints.
Way.
I'm reading a news story from 2018. It is by Newsweek. The FBI actually chose Samsung over Apple as their phone to go to because the FBI has their own version of Android that they've created that works on those phones. So,
really?
Okay,
so that should be even easier to get into.
Well, and more importantly, it would be harder to wipe.
Hey, Sean, let me throw this in real quick. I'm on a Samsung Android right now. I still use Samsung. I use Android. I know how easy it is to use and how hard it would possibly be to screw something up or forget something. Impossible.
Well, and my thing is, if they have their own software to run, that means they're using proprietary software on these phones, and that means they have numerous backdoors in and out. And because it is an FBI software, as BZ said earlier, you call up IT and say, hey, IT, I'm on my 5th lockout. I don't want to reset my phone.
Yeah.
Can I plug this in and you guys do your thing?
And then somebody comes over from IT and they look at it and they blast you around, you stupid moron.
And that may be a matter.
And why didn't you use your fingerprint?
That may be a matter of speculation. I can tell you why, because my print reads horribly on these. But that may be a matter of speculation. But the simple fact of the matter is, if you have a proprietary software, you have people that can work with it.
Well, if they've somehow managed to. My guess here's the deal also. Remember, the FBI historically has had very serious problems trying to get into Apple phones.
Right.
So it would seem to me that they went with Android because they didn't want to have that issue with their own employees.
This was before that. The decision for this was made in 2015. And they still use them today. They still use Android. So the other thing, too, is, and I'm trying to think of the page struck phone text messages that we've seen, and I'm trying to remember the screenshots that we've seen, if they are on an Android setting or an Apple setting.
That's a good question. I got another story, one that I kind of glossed over a little bit, but you reminded me of.
Of course
Sack
I
Heads
did.
SHAUN, because you're just that kind of a guy.
I am that good.
Biden spokesman, this occurred today. And Dan, I'm sure you already know about this. Biden spokesman refuses to discuss whether former VP used teleprompter to answer questions. And before the show, Sack Heads SHAUN and I discussed this very briefly, and I said, Sack Heads SHAUN asked me, okay, have you heard about that? And I said, in passing, I heard somebody address that, but I don't know who it was. And then he said, well, it was Brett Baer. And I said, wait, Brett Baer. Brett Baer is like the milquetoast dude, the most moderate, the most kind of down the middle of anybody that Fox News has. And you're going to say that this is a biased question and you're going to throw that at Brett Baer? Let's see if I can get this to play. It says I should be able to. Let's find out. Son of a gun. I'm getting the blue circle of death on this thing.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Well, talk amongst yourselves while I try to see if I can get this rolling again. But I find it interesting.
Let me tell you something about the Biden teleprompter thing. Now, he was doing a virtual event with the AFL-CIO, I think, and he was getting asked, basically, he was supposed to be getting asked off-the-cuff questions and giving answers during this discussion and what have you. So if you haven't seen the video, go watch the video of this, of him getting caught using the teleprompter. Now, here's what was very interesting was how dazed and confused he looked, again, reading off of the teleprompter. You know how Biden has a long history of having trouble of having clear answers, clear thoughts on certain, when asked difficult questions and stuff like that. Not being able to talk off the top of his head, and it's even more pronounced when you watch the video of this, watching him try to do this off the teleprompter. It makes you scratch your head because he seemed to be more confused using the teleprompter than if he had just been trying to answer the questions, from his gut instead of reading it verbatim off the teleprompter.
Okay, I finally got it. I found another source for this because the other one wasn't going to work. Here's Brett Baer talking to, I can't think of this guy's name. Oh, TJ Ducklo, Ducklo. And so apparently Ducklo melts down under the intense scrutiny of Brett Baer.
Joe Biden ever used a teleprompter during local interviews or to answer Q&A with supporters?
Brett, we are not going to engage. This is straight from the Trump campaign's
but yeah,
talking
they're
points.
using it.
And what it does, Brett, is it's trying to distract the American people.
They're using it. They talk about it every day. Can you say yes or no?
That's because they talk about it every day, Brett, because they don't have a coherent
well, you have
strategy.
an answer. Yes or no?
Brett, they talk about it every day because they don't have a coherent argument for why Donald Trump deserves re-election, deserves 4 more years. We know that he lied to the American people. We know that he has not shown leadership during this crisis, and they are desperate to throw anything they can against the wall to try to distract from that fact.
I understand, but you can't answer the question.
Brett, I am not going to allow the Trump campaign to funnel their questions through Fox News and get me to respond to that.
So, everybody knows that's an adult over the age of 5. The answer is...
No.
got a sound effect for that. Hold on. Let's just.
Okay.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah. Here's another one. I'm going to forego the break because we have so little time to be together customarily. So, folks, you're listening to this. Of course, you should know. Hello.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
This was a great sound cut. This is Rick Grinnell schooling the media in the U.S. press corps, and we're not here to take a lecture from you. Really? Now, this is what I object to. The difference that Dan Butcher has indicated between his house and specifically the house in D.C. is these guys lie for a living. Mm-hmm. Dan doesn't. Listen to Rick Grinnell, who knows everything about what he's saying because he lives it, he breathes it, he smells it, he's walked in it.
Ambassador Grinnell, clearly you were effective here as the special envoy to these talks between Serbia and Kosovo, but I wanted to ask you about another initiative you led. Last year you kicked off the Trump administration push to decriminalize homosexuality.
Yeah, I'm going to just talk.
Okay, now this is interesting. Now Twitter is saying, sorry, this video could not be played.
Hold on a second, because I want to set this up a little bit.
Whoa.
What they were trying to do is, and obviously it's the Serbia-Kosovo agreement to normalize relations, which is huge. Serbia and Kosovo go back to, 1993, 1992? When it all went to hell over there, and have not normalized relationships since, even though they're right next to each other in modern day technology.
Yeah, and they ward the shit out of each other.
Right. It needed to be
and
done.
historically, this is huge.
So this is a press conference for that. But for people who don't know who Richard Grinnell is, he's the national security
and former ambassador to Germany.
Former ambassador to Germany.
Right.
And openly gay. Yeah. And Trump knows he's gay. And they've been trying to make a bigger story out of that, and he does not want a story about that. He just wants to serve his country and do what he does. And he's a brilliant man. If you've ever read anything or seen him speak, the dude deserves the position he's in.
He knows what he's talking about.
He's squared away.
Let me see if I can get this to go.
But they're trying to take him down another. They're trying to take him down another path.
I don't know if you can find it on a map.
Oh wait, no. Okay. Hang on.
Ambassador Grinnell, clearly you were effective here as the special envoy to these talks between Serbia and Kosovo, but I wanted to ask you about another initiative you led. Last year you kicked off the Trump administration push to decriminalize homosexuality.
Yeah, I'm going to just talk about Kosovo and Serbia. I don't know if you can find it on a map, but this is atrocious. I have to tell you guys, you might be too young to understand what this issue is about. Maybe the older journalists should step up and say, this is a big deal. Mm-hmm. This is a big issue.
Huge.
I'm astounded at what happens in Washington, D.C., and especially in this room. I got to tell you, get substantive. Maybe it's too complicated of an issue for you all.
But this is the first time we've had the opportunity to speak with these individuals.
Okay, but today's about Kosovo and Serbia. Let's take a little time and talk about this 21-year issue, Peter. I mean, 21-year issue. We're getting the same questions that are all politics. You guys don't understand what's happening outside of Washington, D.C. People aren't listening to you anymore. It's really a crisis in journalism. And I think it's because people are too young to understand issues like Kosovo and Serbia. How about a substantive question?
Please? I don't think any of us came here for a lecture about our questioning.
Okay, well, I didn't come here
question I would like to ask you, the question I would like to ask you is it accurate to say that it's full economic normalization? There was some ambiguity as to whether that is what the deal is about. And
what do you mean by full?
Well, that's the question for you.
No, it's a question for you. What's your definition of full? This is economic normalization for whatever the two parties could bring together. A whole bunch on rail, a whole bunch on water, a whole bunch on different industries.
So more accurate to say working towards economic normalization, is that fair?
No, I think it's incredible economic normalization. Air, rail, motor, opening borders, a whole bunch of industries. So, again, I don't know what's missing, and I defer to you to say what's outside of economic normalization that's not included here. You tell me.
Genuinely asking so that we can write our stories accurately.
Yeah.
Do we say that they
I would
have
say
achieved
it's
an
economic
normalization deal?
And changed from, a few months ago when they pulled down the tariffs to today. What is the substantive
difference? Have you read the agreement?
You haven't put the agreement out.
It's up. A whole bunch has changed since the dropping of the tariffs. The tariffs were the political sticking point of why we couldn't have the parties come together. The Serb side was not going to even start negotiations when there's a 100% tariff from the Kosovars.
So what's the substantive thing that changed today?
There's
There's
a whole bunch of stuff that changed today in terms of economic development, in terms of identification for even some political problems that are going to be resolved. I would really refer you to look at the entire agreement. One sticking point that has been for a long time something that the two sides couldn't agree on was the recognition of diplomas. You were trained as a nurse.
Okay, we've had enough of that one. Now, I want your comments, Dan and Sean, and I'm going to play another one. This one has to do with this chick, Kylie McElhaney.
Kylie McElhaney?
Yeah.
She's brutal.
It's
great.
Sharper than a brand new Spyderco knife out of the box.
And here's the thing with the interview with Ambassador Grinnell is, they wanted to go right to the whole gay social justice warrior approach.
What the hell was that about?
When you have
Jesus, you're not there for that.
A momentous agreement in southeastern Europe, whatever you want to call it, where Serbia is. And if you don't know where Serbia is, Serbia, Kosovo, it's right next to Montenegro, Albania, across the water from
why make fun of
Italy.
Montenegro?
And, it was that war was brutal. And if we all remember, Hillary Clinton claimed to be shot at by a sniper while she was in Serbia.
In her mind.
But that's where it was. You also have to remember, this is 3 days after the Trump administration, and I'm sure Grinnell had a major part of it, with the Israel-UAE deal, or 5 days.
Doesn't it make you think, though, hey, why didn't we hear the Israel gay thing when they were doing... Because if someone had been thinking about it at that time, somebody probably would have shot up their head and said, what about the gay Israelis in the UAE?
Jared Kushner was on the forefront of it, but Grinnell, had a major part in it because that's his job. But the simple fact of the matter is, you have an administration that had two major international victories, if you will, within a week of each other.
To the point where he's been put up for the Nobel Peace Prize.
And you now have the first question being, I know you guys just worked for months on this deal and you may be normalizing the region and stabilizing the region.
Yeah, but I don't give a shit about that.
Remember last year when the president made a move to outlaw homosexuality laws? And it's wait a minute. That's a totally separate... That's the president. That's not my job. I'm here to give you information on this deal that I'm working on right now. What the hell, man? And Grinnell's a stud. Dude.
Do not mess with him. He is sharp on his feet.
He is a stud. I don't care what anyone says. He is the perfect person for that job, and I hope he gets nominated through the next term.
God, yes.
Let me sum all that up real quick. You had a reporter that was trying to catch Grinnell in a gotcha moment, kind of looking for some type of outtake, some type of quote that could make hey, orange man bad. Orange man hates homosexuals, that type of thing. That's what that reporter was looking for.
Yeah.
The reporter could have cared less about this agreement.
Yep.
What he was looking for was a gotcha quote to get his 15 seconds of fame that day. You have too many reporters, especially in the White House press corps, that are just looking for that extra 15 seconds of fame that particular day. And I think they find out that more times than not that they get their ass handed to them, whether it is Grinnell, whether it is the president himself, or whether it's the new press secretary, who is absolutely outstanding, by the way.
And as far as the White House press corps goes, I think there needs to start being a rule that if you start asking subjects that are off topic, or out of left field, or if you act in a disrespectful manner, then you need to have your press credentials stripped, not your news agency.
Trump is the only one I think that did that about a year or two ago.
With Acosta.
Oh, with Jim Acosta, that's right. It was
not your
Acosta.
agency, because you have the right to free press. But that particular reporter, they're supposed to stay to a certain level of decorum. That doesn't mean you can't ask follow-up questions. That doesn't mean that you can't ask intrusive questions. But what they are doing day in and day out with Kayleigh McEnany, they did it with Sarah Sanders, is oftentimes bullying and disrespecting. And when she asks them a question, this is the other thing too, they'll throw something out, she'll hit them with something in return, and then they won't respond. And it's like, no, wait a minute. You're going to misquote the president. This was a couple days ago. You make sure you say the whole quote. And the woman just ignored her. It's like, wait a minute. No. You don't get to play, I'm taking my ball and going home once you drop your bomb to leave the room. Because we all know what they want.
Because that's the point.
And Dan nailed it. They're 15 seconds of fame. They want that 1 15-second sound clip that they'll play on their network that night and ignore the rest of it. And I think part of pushing back on the media by and large that needs to happen in this country is having decorum, because look, people are watching this shit like crazy. And if they look at you talking to the White House press secretary and the president, they do it with the president too.
Sure.
In a bombastic, and like I said,
and abusive to Sarah Sanders.
And if you want to say, I don't care if they ask follow-up questions. I don't care if they take a contrary stance. That's fine. But you still act with decorum. It's been going on for years that they've been able to conduct themselves up until it seems like this president for some reason.
Well, let's also make this point, if I could. Right. If you're in the Washington, D.C. press corps, it is incumbent. How can you walk into that room and know nothing about Richard Grenell? How can you walk into that room and not know that Richard Grenell, an SME, a subject matter expert on all of that, because of his ambassadorship and his background in leadership, etc.? How can you know that Richard Grenell is not going to throw this back at you? You haven't done your investigations yourself. You're an ignorant fuck, and you don't belong in there. Did you think Grenell is just going to bend over backwards for you? That's not going to happen. He's intelligent, and he's not taking that crap.
There's a big difference between walking in that room and asking there's nothing wrong with asking tough questions. Okay, that's
exactly.
That should be a job. You should ask the tough questions, and elected officials, people in administration, whatever, they should expect to get tough questions. There's a big difference when you are trying to completely push an agenda. You're trying to push off topic because that is a prime example of the gotcha moment that they're looking for, and being confrontational. There used to be a Sean Hill had I interview elected officials all the time. There's a lot of them. They know when they sit down with me, it's on the record, and they're going to get the tough questions. But they also know that I'm going to be fair. There's a key word right there. And even if they don't like the questions that I'm asking, they're still going to respect me back, and you know what? They're going to answer the question and try to give me the best answer they can. Even if I'm pressing them a little bit, you know what? I expect them to press me back a little bit, because I think if they're pressing me back a little bit, it's going to help me foster the conversation even more, get the answer that I'm looking for without having to be confrontational. Without, obviously you're going to have some back and forth sometime, because, people have egos. People have their opinion here. They have their opinion here. You're digging for a story. Maybe they don't want you to dig for the story. But however, you still have that mutual respect, hey, we're going to try to get this answer the best that we possibly can, because I know at some point I'm going to have to come back, and we're going to have this discussion again, maybe on a different subject. And maybe there's going to be something that we're going to have a conversation on and an interview on that's something that we both agree on, that's a kind of a more friendly thing. And so there's the lack of decorum, the lack of respect, right there from the press corps,
and
is absolutely atrocious.
Funny you should mention that, because I also have. I'm not going to play all of this, but you'll get the gist of it right now. Here we go.
Did President Trump...
Okay, video unavailable. Okay, that's very interesting. Going to have to find another source for this. You guys chat without me. I'm going to find another source for this because I'm going to play this tonight.
Well, let's do this, because I used to do this with Sean a lot, and a lot of times when I would come on, or Sean was on the air back in the old Sack Head days, and a lot of people don't know that Sean used to host his own show that I would come in a couple of days a week and kind of host for him and stuff like that. And so I'd always send him these wonderful little headlines. And so I've got a couple for you, and here's the first one. And I think everybody's heard this story. Disorderly goat takes over cop car, headbutts deputy, and eats all the paperwork. Goat goes wild in Georgia, and it was all caught on video. That's a true story.
Yes.
Now, here's the other one I've got for you. Now, here's the other one I've got for you, Sean. You'll appreciate this one. Taxidermized squirrel beer among offerings at disgusting food museum. The Swedish Museum is devoting a new exhibit to bizarre beverages such as spit fermented wine, liquor fermented in prison toilets, and drinks made from different types of feces.
Jesus.
And that story?
God. Okay.
Associated Press reporter.
Anybody eating dinner, breakfast, or lunch right now, or even a snack,
is done.
We really apologize to you. OMFG. Oh, God, Dan. Okay, I think I found it.
President Trump intentionally mislead the American people about the threat of COVID, a pandemic that has now cost the lives of nearly 200,000 Americans.
Absolutely not. This president, at a time when you're facing insurmountable challenges, it's important to express confidence. It's important to express calm.
Always play it down. Is playing it down? Is that expressing calm? It seems dishonest. It seems.
Can you read the rest of the quote?
That's how much they put in there.
Oh, you excluded the last part.
We'll play the full thing on 60 Minutes.
Please
do you deny that you
explain.
The American
Please,
people
of
about
course
the
I
threat
deny
of this
that.
pandemic?
And he makes clear that he doesn't want to see chaos, by the way, is the second part of the quote, which you failed to read. The president, just days after having this...
Okay, I don't know if you guys have noticed over the past couple of months when she's been in there, when she goes in to make an address of a particular topic or a series of topics, have you guys noticed she has a binder with her? And in that binder, there are quotes, very, very specific quotes. So one of the reasons that she's able to go back and assail the people that are attempting to agendize her is because she has the truth written out in front of her on the podium. She is the nth degree of prepared.
Discussion with Bob Woodward said this from this podium. On March 30th, he said, I do want them to stay calm. We are doing a great job. If you look at the individual statements, they're all true. Stay calm. It will go away, but it's important to stay calm. So this president does what leaders do, good leaders. It's stay calm and resolute at a time when you face an insurmountable challenge. That's what this president has done.
It will not appear that the president lied to the American public about the threat posed by COVID.
The president has never lied to the American public on COVID. The president was...
Okay, you guys get the gist of what's going on about that.
Right.
But it's a continuing series where... Just as you said, Sean and Dan, the agenda is there. They're there for the sound bite to take it back. It's like besting Kaylee in battle and taking her blood-dripping skull to put it and mount it on their desk.
Yeah, right on the pike. Well, look, I mean, they won't hit Biden when Biden essentially said, well, I called the president, told him exactly what to do and how dangerous this COVID thing was.
Yeah.
And then I forget which Fox reporter it was, but hit him with, well, if it was so dangerous and you knew it, then why were you still having your rallies afterwards? And so they won't cover that. They won't talk about that, right? Other people, Biden made an assumption about COVID-19 from before, like years ago, and I forget the exact quote, but it was bombastic and crazy as well. And I was like, well, it's called COVID-19 because the strain came out of 2019. But that's neither here nor there,
yeah,
Joe. Whatever
yeah.
you want. You just keep making up your own timeline. That's all you friggin' do anyhow. But the simple fact of the matter is they will twist whatever they can. And look, somebody brought this up a great point. It wasn't like when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor that FDR came running out, or maybe not running.
Wheeling out.
Wheeling out, yeah, probably wasn't the best thing. Screaming, oh my God, we're all going to die, right? As a leader, it's his job, even if he is downplaying a little bit until they can get resources in place. Yeah, maybe he did downplay it a little bit. He didn't lie. He maybe was a little bit more low-key than people would have liked, but that's an opinion at that point as to whether or not he was an alarmist or not. Now, let's flip this around. Let's say he came out February 1st and said, ladies and gentlemen, we're fucked. And then the whole country went crazy.
Then they go crazy, they explode, and it's all his fault.
Right. So this is an opinion. If anybody still to this day can walk back the COVID timeline and tell me what Trump did that was unreasonable given the information we were receiving at the time, he can only make decisions with the most current information that he believes is believable.
Let me make this point. February 21st, Nancy Pelosi is in Chinatown telling people, come to Chinatown.
Well,
1 month prior to that, January 21st, President Trump shuts down travel from China.
They were calling him a xenophobe.
Yep.
All these other things. But you know what the funny part is? Biden's spokesperson today, Ducklow, when that was brought on to him, like, hey, wait a minute, if your candidate, and Brett Baer said, if Vice President Biden knew this, why did he do all this? And Ducklow was like, well, even with the shutdown, there were tens of thousands of people coming and going. And it's like, that wasn't any part of this.
No, zero.
We were trying to lock it down. And if I recall, as soon as he said lock it down, let's go back to all the news agencies shitting on him for locking it down.
Oh, that is so bad. Terrible.
You can't do that. And it's xenophobic. And not every single Chinese person has COVID. Well, okay, we don't know that. We didn't even have a test. I can tell you as a victim as a false negative for COVID, which I was early on.
Yeah, let's stop that for there just for a second. Folks who don't know, and I was here in the studio and didn't come into the studio for 2 weeks when Sack Heads SHAUN basically had Wuhan 19.
Yeah.
And you had to get through it. Then I came back to the studio. We started doing shows. You've been through that. You took the test.
Right. And I was in the first batch of tests in which they knew at that time, the doctor who swabbed me said, hey, your test came back negative, but all of your signs are positive, and we're getting about a 60% fail rate with this first batch of tests. 60% fail rate.
Yeah.
So
imagine that.
And that's what he said. He was like, and that does not include if the test wasn't administered perfectly, if it wasn't processed perfectly, and if it wasn't handled perfectly, then your percentage goes up. That's just the test itself in a neutral state.
Didn't we also find out at the time, right around the time that you got that back east, the thing was people were discovering a lot of those tests were negative as well.
Well, they were negative, and the first round of tests that came over, we got from China.
Imagine that.
And they were junk. And if you look at the European doctors wrote heavily about this early on, because they were dealing with that first batch of tests too, about how unreliable they were. And that's when they started going to, if you have the symptoms, then you self-isolate, which I had all the symptoms. I had the basic baseline easy symptoms. My COVID was not bad. I don't want anyone to like, oh yeah. No. I had no sympathy. I was tired. I had a little bit of a chest cold and a slight fever for 2 weeks.
You said it was like a flu.
Yeah, it was just like a flu. I was exhausted. That was the biggest difference. I was exhausted. I slept probably 16 hours a day.
I want to get this cut in because we got about seven more minutes to go. I want you guys, now I am an officially certified leftist interpreter. Sometimes I don't do well with this, so I want you guys to see if you can interpret this for me.
Thank you all. I carry with me, I don't have it, I gave it to my staff, but I carry with me in my pocket do I have that around anyone? Where's my staff? I gave it away anyway. I carry a schedule in my pocket. Well, thank you.
Who am I?
Okay.
Where am I?
That's your future vice president of the President of the United States.
He was vice president.
Yeah. Dan?
Well, let me think.
Again, another reason why Ducklow
where am I? Where are we?
was living up to his name.
I gave it away. Oh, wait a minute. I've got a comment. Wait, here it is. Oh, no, almost got it. Oh, yeah, vote for me.
Hey, you know what, though? You leave Joe Biden's husband alone. How many times has he said that? That's my wife over there, Joe Biden.
Yeah.
I'm her husband. Yeah. I'm Joe Biden's husband. Yeah. It's like, dude, like, who are you reminding? Jill, you, or the public? I don't know.
I said this before. I'll say it again until this is taken care of. Sean or Dan, in Joe Biden's situation, and I want to be serious just for a microsecond. Would you, if you were married, Sean, Dan, would your wives do to you, if you were in Joe Biden's condition, what Jill Biden is doing to her husband? I cannot feature anything more cynical than this being this is being done to her husband.
BZ, I can speak to this personally.
Okay.
Because I can think even, sitting here tonight listening, because, I alluded to you earlier that I may have to correct myself, stop and think a little bit on some different subjects, and might forget something like that. I can think over especially the last year, how protective my wife has been of me, making sure that I did not do something stupid,
Yeah, but it goes
because of forgetting, or maybe having a lapse of judgment, something like that. I'm just thinking about how much my own wife protected me from similar circumstances, to keep me from getting into a situation where I didn't need to be, making sure that I did not embarrass myself. And different things like that. I just know how protective she was to make sure that did not happen to me, because she knew it would hurt me personally, kind of hurt my feelings or something like that. And so to see, I'm trying to think, how my wife is reacting versus how she's acting. My wife would not do that.
No.
If I was running for president, there's no way.
Well, and Danny, you and I both know she's been like that with you for years for other things too. So it's not like this is a new and sudden thing. She's consistently always looked out for your best interest before everything else.
Exactly. And that's a true statement. Not joking around. It's a true statement.
100%. 100%.
But that's the job.
Right. And I don't know, for me, I can just tell you what I would do as a spouse in that situation where, no, you can't do that. And look, she's either incredibly weak and afraid to tell him, like, Joe, we shouldn't be doing this, or she does not care enough to stand up and say, Joe, we can't do this. But either way, look, any Democrat reporter, anyone on the left, anyone who's a Trump hater, who's going to come out right now and say, if you look at Joe Biden and tell me that all of his faculties are firing on all 8 cylinders, I will call you a liar straight to your face. And you know it. You are either so naive about how human beings react, and you look at Trump, and he says bombastic things, but they're not aloof and unattached to the situation.
Let me throw this question out to you both. What do you think the odds are that there's actual debates between the two? And because of just the sheer situation that you could have with Biden misspeaking or what have you, or do you think the debates will be where they might protect the former vice president from misspeaking.
You said that last week, Sean. You said he's going to magically get COVID-19.
Yep. He's going to end up with COVID within 3 or 4 days before. Why do you think he's all of a sudden going out into public and shaking hands and touching all these people, right? He's going to go for the sympathy vote because if you look at the polling, and we know that the polling is always off anyhow, if we look at the polling, which traditionally always favors the Democrat more than the incumbent, polling does, not the actual votes, but the actual polling usually goes towards the Democratic candidate in every goddamn race up until the last month.
Right.
And the fact that they are so 50-50 right now, they are absolutely going to try to play the sympathy card. Oh, look, Trump's out there with all these things, and I went out and just did a couple, and I caught the Wuhan 19, and this is why we need masks. Why do you think they released that video of him today in the dark room? Remember how he put out that I'm going to be the dark force and the light in the dark tweet a couple weeks ago? Today they did an ominous dark room, Joe Biden standing there looking tough, and they zoom in as he puts the mask on. And they released that little GIF as I guarantee you he is going to come down with COVID-19. If I am wrong, so help me God, I will owe both of you a drink.
This came out today, I noticed, and another indicator. This is an NBC News poll, Marist poll. Today, Latino support in Florida, Donald Trump 50%, Joe Biden 46%, in Florida. What the hell?
If I'm advising Biden right now, I say we stop spending money in Florida. Florida's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, Danny, 4 years ago, and we covered this together, BZ, you were there, we were wondering how Trump was going to win Florida because of the Hispanic vote. We were wondering how he was going to do it because the traditional Trump supporters in Florida weren't coming out to vote in the previous two elections. So we had a whole discussion live on the air about how the hell Trump was going to pull Florida off. And that was now, with him winning the Hispanic vote, which is the key vote with Florida, a lot of Cubans are starting to swing back conservative. They kind of went to the left under Obama, but they're coming back conservative. Puerto Ricans, too. Those are your larger Hispanic bases in Florida. You have some Brazilian and some other ones that mix in, some Mexican. But those are your Cubans. I'll tell you right now.
They're not the monolith everyone thinks they are.
Well, and they're also looking at the country they grew up in, Cuba, or their relatives grew up in. And with Venezuela being the hot cesspool that it is right now, the reminder of communism and socialism is being spoken in their families and around the table.
And they're watching it
here. And they're not, they are not wanting that because that's what they escaped from. And I'm not joking.
No, you're not.
They were literally floating across the Atlantic Ocean on anything that they could find in the 80s and 90s to escape to America. They're not going to let the same thing happen to America. So if I'm advising Joe Biden right now, stop spending money in Florida. Get out of Florida. Go for one of the other battleground states. Pennsylvania ain't looking great either, but at least you're ahead a little bit in Pennsylvania.
Minnesota ain't looking that good either.
Minnesota's looking
Wisconsin
terrible for him.
Ain't looking that good.
Yeah, so, I mean, and I know we got to wrap, and this brings me to an interesting topic, and I want Danny's opinion on this. Danny, I am under the belief that outside of California and New York and maybe and Massachusetts, I think that everywhere else is going to go Trump.
He can't even pull Delaware.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, and here's the thing. Just like in 2016, everybody was underestimating Trump. It is very dangerous to do so. Never underestimate the guy. And, the way things are turning out right now, we are looking at an exact repeat. Trump loves the underdog role. He is relishing that role. He loves being called the underdog. Mm-hmm. He loved it in 2016. He's loving it now. It plays to his advantage. It plays the cards to him. He thrives off of it. He loves that role. And I think the Democrats are making the very same mistake again that they made in 2016, underestimating Trump and underestimating the American people.
Which is why they have to shit in the American punch bowl.
Yeah.
And they're going to do it.
Well, they're going to try. We'll see. But yeah, I think outside of California, Massachusetts, and New York, I think you're even going to see Vermont go for Trump. I think you're going to see the Midwest is a cinch. Texas,
given.
I think.
Well, Dan, let me ask you, Texas.
Here's the thing about Texas. Once again, you have the Democrats. They've not grasped the Hispanic vote here. They greatly underestimate it. Now, a lot of people, the Democrats have a very strong, Texas is a target. They would love to try to turn, the goal's not to turn Texas blue, it's to make it a swing state. But I'll say this, it's nowhere near being a swing state. Now, it is competitive. We've seen some competitive races here. Okay, we've got a real good competitive race for United States Senator between M.J. Hager and John Cornyn. That's going to be another close race, like you saw between O'Rourke and Ted Cruz. And so it's far from being a swing state. It is a competitive state, and the way that I'm kind of looking at things, and I look a lot at Real Clear Politics because you kind of get a good gauge of all the polls and stuff like that. If you look at Real Clear Politics, the states, the way the states are starting to lean, or that are toss-ups and different things like that, it's starting to look like the electoral map is going to look a lot like it did in 2016. The big difference here is I think Trump wins the popular vote this time.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that's, for the first time tonight, I agree, and I believe Sack Heads SHAUN agrees with that.
I do as well.
I believe President Trump is going to get a second, and he's going to take 2 venues. But the extra confusion across all of this, sown by the Democrats, I can't. Well, let me again ask you, Dan. Sean and I have already discussed this. November 3rd, November 4th, right around in there, do you foresee violence?
What? I don't see any. I'll be honest with you. I think a lot of it calms down. I think a lot of this you're seeing being incited to try to distract. Okay, you're seeing a lot of stuff that's fully. You're seeing a lot of gasoline poured on the fire. I really do think that after the election towards the first of the year, I think things start to calm down. I think you see COVID disappear.
Oh yeah.
There's going to be magic. Magic involved.
COVID will magically be better.
I really do think. You're still going to have. We've always had protesters, but I think the extreme violence that you're seeing, especially what you're seeing in Portland, a lot of stuff you're seeing in Seattle, different things like that, I think you're going to see that calm down tremendously, especially by the time the inauguration comes around.
Oh, I think by Thanksgiving, because look at all this money is coming in from leftists that's supporting these groups, and leftists overseas are dumping all this money into it. And once the election's over and they lost their money, they're not going to throw their money away. They're going to pull all the money from those protests, and it will be gone by Thanksgiving, in my opinion.
Okay, let's make a forecast right now. Sack Heads SHAUN, Dan, you're in the violence will predominantly be gone by Thanksgiving category.
Yeah.
Am I correct,
Yep.
Dan?
I think let's go. Personally, I think you'll start to see it die down by the holidays. Thanksgiving, Christmas. By the time the inauguration rolls around, it's completely gone. I think it's completely died down.
You'll have a surge at the inauguration, the day before, the day afterwards, the day during, and you'll have the downtrend, because the other thing too is winter's coming. And people don't like to be outside when it's cold.
Winter is coming,
and that does play a major role. So I think that, by and large, you'll see a downturn by Thanksgiving, and you'll have a little bit going on right around the election.
I think George R.R. Martin has killed more people than communism.
Hey, guys, let me throw this out there. Isn't it amazing right now what a COVID event that the Sturgis biker rally has turned out to be versus the the non-COVID events of the protest, of violence taking place in Portland and stuff like that. Think about that.
The cool thing is that this virus is geometrically more intelligent than anyone ever suspected. It knows whom to target. It somehow susses out their political affiliation and goes for those people. If this were a engineered virus, you couldn't have done it any better. This thing knows who it's going for.
Well, my favorite part too is that the influx of COVID cases we had in California, specifically in the Oakland, Sacramento, and Los Angeles areas after the initial BLM rallies and the George Floyd death, had nothing to do with those protests. I thought that was amazing that they knew that.
See, all this stuff is a lot smarter
than we can ever give credit for.
Ever imagine.
Hey, let me ask you guys this. Which is the bigger crisis right now in California? The wildfires or COVID?
By far the wildfires.
Yeah.
By far.
Exactly.
Yeah, the wildfires.
Exactly. Which is still getting the most coverage?
COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, those
COVID
fires.
Well, and you know, it's so funny too because they've amped up how they've reported COVID differently since that last round came out, saying that 6% of the people died strictly from COVID. The rest had the comorbidity rate.
Yeah.
So now how they report it is different.
Which
you notice they
was
focus
never covered.
They are focusing on just the numbers of infected versus the deaths. They were covering the deaths for the longest time.
Yeah, now it's just cases.
Right. And now that more and more talks about New York and how Cuomo handled it and the deaths in the nursing home is starting to come up, which I think that's going to go somewhere.
That was a huge issue back then. It can't go away.
And the other thing I said too is Trump's not dumb. He knows that he can't go after certain people before the election or it's just going to be purely a political thing. But after the election where he's a lame duck, watch who he goes after for certain things.
Bada bing, bada boom. You and I talked about that Tuesday night. And we said, this lame duck president is going to, if you think that he pulled the ton 100 miles an hour during the first 4 years, you ain't seen speed yet.
I think Cuomo's in trouble. I think there's a federal investigation opened into Cuomo about forcing people with COVID into nursing homes when they knew and the science was there that the ability to transfer the virus was so easily and it affected the old. Look, we heard that was the first thing you'd right. Infirm and old are the two biggest at risk, and it still reigns true. But that was the first big group that they were worried about. They were worried about kids wrongly because, as it turns out, it doesn't do shit to kids other than they carry it.
Yeah, like the regular flu.
Thank God, but seriously. But the reality of the situation is, I think after that, Cuomo and other people on his staff, and there may be, I think New Jersey may follow suit too, because they kind of had the same deal.
Yes, they did.
I think you're going to see some investigations going on there.
Let me wrap up this with a quote.
Okay.
With regard to Newsom and California and Wuhan 19. This is a direct quote from him. And Sean, you just mentioned the CDC numbers that just came out, the 6%, and the rest of the crap was comorbidities. I had a shark bite. I'm missing my upper torso. Wuhan 19. The quote is, I don't agree with the new CDC guidance, period. Full stop. It's not the policy in the state of California. We're influenced by those who are experts in the field who feel very differently.
Well, once again, the Democrats pick the science they like and ignore the science they don't.
Imagine that.
Plain and simple.
Right.
Dan, thanks for being here.
Danny, always a pleasure, sir.
Man. You bet. Appreciate it, guys.
All right. Take care, sir.
You bet.
Wow. 2 hours and 15 minutes with Dan, with me, with Sean. Thanks for everybody being here tonight.
I'm going to start charging you overtime.
Yeah, I'm like 13 minutes into it
I
right
know.
now. Something like that.
I know.
Right around 13.
My contract was for an hour.
I know. So, yeah, you do get overtime.
Yep.
What was that song by Billy Preston? Nothing times nothing is nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
When you had
you can sing that when you get the bill if you want.
Yeah, I can.
It doesn't change the numbers on the page. Sing whatever the hell you want.
Well, I guess I did like this song. smiling through, just like you always do. I'll see you next week, folks.
Yes, sir.
I got J.T. Wolf coming in, an economist, next Thursday. I'm in negotiations with Brandon Straka to see when he comes back. He wants to come back either this coming Tuesday night or Tuesday after, but as you might expect these days specifically, he's a busy
dude,
guy.
Brandon's everywhere.
He's everywhere in the president's office.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Getting thumped, was in San Francisco, was in Sacramento.
Yep. Just
damn it, he
in
didn't.
Texas.
I could have had him in the damn saloon.
Yep, he is.
All right, so Brandon Straka coming. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening live in podcast. Thanks for being in chat. Have a great smoke-free weekend, but not if you're in California.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children. Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good
Good night, Jim Bob. Go to sleep.
Good night, and good luck.